Lambda function, the reason I don't select these is because, for one, VPC gets really expensive. So I don't use virtual private cloud. I would rather use VPS because I can monitor the cost. And for what I do, it's just a smarter solution. I just run a ton of websites that generate traffic, that draw in traffic, that show up as searchable terms, right? So I don't really need the VPC. I don't enable tags because I don't have enough reason to have tags yet. But if you have like a ton of clients with a whole bunch of different things to do, you can track them that way. The reason I don't enable the function URL is because then you're exposing your endpoint to exploitation or abuse, right? So if you use the function URL, which makes your code look nice and clean, you then have to like set up IAM stuff through AWS, which is a pain in my opinion. Like I'd rather not have to do that. And then if I say none, then I have to set up some other form of like checking to make sure that the right people are not using my authentication or using my stuff without authentication, right? And then code signing, this isn't blockchain necessarily, but it's another measure to check that the place that's claiming sent it. And you will hear from DevOps engineers and cloud engineers like, there's so many, this is easier, this and that. Like to me, because I'm working with small local businesses, like all of that extra minutia is insignificant and inconsequential. So if I'm trying to get this product to a client right away, like I'm not going to sit there and finagle with this. Because in the end, my real guardrails are in a different place, right? So I can also leave the authentication as none and then use CORS, which is what I prefer to do, the cross-origin resource sharing. Because this way, if somebody asks me for something, like if affiliate marketing dude, right, was to say like, we need some really neat like interactive elements where somebody can click a drop-down box and then we can give them back some information or whatnot. Right, like now that we have access to this like super powerful AI or LLM through the ChatGPT interface, which is basically this one right here, right? Where's that other model? See, like I don't get to see the models here. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. Like the using the API is just see, like o1-preview here, I can't use file attachments, but I can push them through if I'm using the API. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail. But okay, so now that I can use o1-preview, I can, my ex is a roofer and he does a lot of solar stuff, right? And he was telling me like, well, we need to be able to do this for solar panel installers or whatever. So now that we have access to the o1-preview, I know that if somebody builds him a different type of chatbot, like he's not going to have access because they can't even upload files. And a lot of people do the file upload, but what I can do is ingest the file that way, right? So all that to say that over here with CORS, no matter what website he or anybody throws at me, all I have to do is send them a link and they can put an iframe into their HTML and have access to the back end, which is this o1-preview, where I can ingest the data using a Lambda like the one we're creating that is essentially just reading in everything as either images. And so this particular button that we're making this Lambda for is this image reader, right? So it can read the images with vision and then push them through to through that number crunching Lambda, which I'm doing for a variety of reasons. Like I really want to dig deeper into the latent space because I think it's a different type of math that you are very close to when you use eigenvalues in linear algebra and stuff like that. But there's like a different set of space that, like in some of my conversations with these AI, right? Like and in just some math stuff I know, right? Like there's so many reasons why I'm doing it this way, but that don't need to be a part of this conversation. But I just want to really highlight that is why I choose this particular way of setting up the Lambdas. In this case, I am setting up a reusable Python 3.12 layer because if I try to push all the code into the Lambda, it doesn't fit. So I'm checking to see if making it layer by layer is a better solution. And if not, then I will just like zip this entire function, all of this stuff into one layer, right? And then that is the Lambda function. So I know that probably sounds very convoluted, but just think of this as like a Jenga puzzle, right? And in Jenga, you can't pull something and you can't put something in that will, because it's so, you know, that doesn't have its perfect spot, and you have to put it in just the right way or else the whole thing falls apart. Like, this is all just a big Jenga puzzle. And yes, you can pull stuff out and put stuff in. You just have to like be really mindful of it. And in my perspective, the most important thing is to consider the cost to the end user. So if you work at a startup, they usually burn through their money, right? That's why most of them fail, is because they like, I've worked at startups and they're like, we don't care about cost, we're throwing money at it. And I've been at interviews where like they'll ask me questions about stuff and I'll be like, well, you know, to consider the cost, they're like, we don't care about cost, we got millions of dollars, right? So I, as a more responsible adult, like, and because I'm working with local business owners that are like my neighbors and stuff, right? Like, I'm not gonna set them up for destruction and failure like that. Like, what kind of person would I be? That's why I don't do stuff that I could do here, right? Because I already know that doing it this way is, number one, more flexible, number two, more reusable, number three, easier for a web developer to integrate into their workflow, number four, easier for me to monitor and track and then bill accordingly, because depending on how I set up the OpenAI keys in my project, right? Like, that's why I have these keys, right? Like, I know who's using what, where, when, why. Well, maybe not why. Well, actually, yeah, I do, because I also am within these functions, the way that I created them, I'm storing the conversation that people are having with their own data, but I don't store the session key. I don't store like the browser session key. I generate my own fake key right here. See this right here? I don't know if yeah, that session ID. Like, this is a fake number that I generate, right? And then I keep track of which URL and what day it happened, and then what people said to the thing. But there's no way that I could ever discover like who sent this, right? And actually, I should backtrack for this particular one, because I'm using location as part of the deep fake detection mechanism that I invented the other day. Like, I'm using session keys, but I'm also asking for permission, but it's only for this use case, because the big model for this, like, one of the aspects, I guess I'll just like say it now. Although, like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. So this specific use case is this way. So like the decisions I'm making are for this, right? So that's why when people ask me to build something, if they're not really clear on what it is that they're looking for, it's really hard for me to want to take the time to handhold them through like what are you trying to do? How are you measuring it? Like, do you have a market? Like, all that kinds of stuff is really hard for me, because I'm always really clear on what I'm doing and why. So in this case, so I'll just describe this overarching case, which is what I was going to send to Tradewinds AI as my latest proposal for the Department of Defense to pick up like one of my jobs as a contract. And I'm still debating, like, I mean, I could spin my wheels like trying to get them the perfect thing, whatever they're looking for, or I could just like see if it has a market and just like market it somewhere else, you know, where like I'm not trying to appease entities that I don't even know, and I'm still like, well, what is it exactly that you need from me, so that I'm not shooting in the dark, right? And they have given me a lot of structure, like, not throwing shade on them. I just really think that I need someone. So yeah, this is a shout out to someone, anybody that like has more of that is probably already able to put in contracts to the government. My ex can, but his aren't like code side, so it's a little bit hard to like make it work that way. But if you're already like an arms dealer, or you already have experience putting in bids to the government, and you can make a 5-minute PowerPoint for me, like, you can have some of the percentage if they pick up the contract, because that kind of shit just like, oh, it fucking kills my soul, you know. And I've been getting stuck with creating all these stupid PowerPoints, and instead of doing that, I would rather actually like make the thing that works, right? Because anybody can make a PowerPoint. Clearly, I can't make one that's like answering the right questions the right way, or maybe I don't have the right product, but I'd rather focus on doing this and then using data to make sure that I'm like generating income from it, because I already am past 6 figures. Like, when I work, like, I'm easily past 6 figures. So my goal isn't to trade my time for money. And when my flywheel like gets going, right, like as these things are turning their own paths, right, like I do go back and get a job, because then I get to learn the latest cutting edge stuff at the enterprise level, which I'm not going to pay for myself. So like, for example, Runway ML, if you use the enterprise license, it's like $24,000 a year or something. right? I'm not going to do that, but I can like write the coattails of a commercial company that does that, and then learn the difference between the usability of a commercial license versus myself as a business license. And like, for example, the latest one I used was the OpenAI commercial license. Complete piece of garbage, because the sales engineers had no clue ever, honestly, ever, like what I was talking about, because I was using the team license in ChatGPT, which gave me way more like permissions and control and like fine-tunability, I guess, for everything I was doing. Because otherwise I was having to beg people that didn't have a tech background for like permissions, and that's been the consistent factor in a lot of my jobs, is like having to beg the senior developers or the more established ones for permissions. And so this way, like, I don't have to worry about any of that. And so in my use case for this one, right, like, I would rather build something that's a usable proof of concept that is now like marketed and is generating me income, right, as I work another job where I'm like learning the next phase of like how the Silicon Valley established companies in e-commerce, like the bigger companies, are using this stuff, so that I can then bring it back for the next rotation, right? And I make a shit ton of money at my job, and then I'm making a shit ton of money as this stuff is selling itself, right? So that's just been my cadence, kind of, and it's worked out well for me my whole life. So in my case, yeah, I am trying to make more money and I get paid well by the hour, but I also, like, as I learn how to make stuff by the hour, I then apply it to automation, and then the flywheel like takes off and it makes money for me. So in this case, right, the big picture, right, this is an example of the kind of information I would want from someone that is asking me to make something for them. Like, what are you trying to do? What do your metrics look like? How do you know that you're successful? What does success look like in your metrics, right? And like, who is your use case? So since I'm building this for me, like, I don't need to have a market established, because this is me doing my thing, right? This is so I can go out and fetch myself the market. So so by doing this, I'm like knocking out like 1,000 birds. Oh yeah, we're not supposed to talk about killing birds anymore. Like, I'm knocking out 1,000 things with like one throw, right? So the thing here is it is ingesting the location, which I don't usually do in any of my code, because I believe in privacy, and because it gets me out of a lot of the legalities of like especially like European stuff, and stuff in California. California is really picky about like about not using cookies, right? But this gives the user the opportunity, and one of the deepfake detections is if I send someone a picture and I'm saying like, look, I'm watching your girlfriend make out with so-and-so at Disneyland, but then the location detector checks like where you claim you're at, and then where you tally you're at doesn't match, right? That already lowers your score for like, is this a real image or not, or did you just generate an image and then send it in? Right now I have it set to like a 3-mile radius, but here, see, like, you can see like it is actually like using a free API call to something that I think I get like 20K calls for free per month or something like that. So that's one of the measures that will keep it from working, so that it doesn't overbill me. So like, when I do this, right, if I were to do this stuff, like, the VPC will way overbill me. I've tried it, it's like really expensive, so F that. And then now when I send it to a client, right, like, I can just swap out some of these keys to figure out like who's using what and how much. But the other big factor for this, like, the reason why I'm making these different layers of the Lambda, is that so I am interested in the math, right? Because I really think that with that, like, it's a math that doesn't have words yet. Like, that's all I can tell you, you know. And if you were a cryptographer, like, you could probably help me come up with more words. But even at Boulder, they told me like, we don't know anybody that like can surpass like where you're at. When I was doing the post-quantum cryptography and the Bitcoin blockchain stuff, like, there was nobody I could ask. And right now I feel like there's nobody I can ask, except for the AI. But that's one level of check, is like, are you in the location you're claiming you're at, right? So then that's one metric that I can use. The next metric for myself is, I don't think that we are going to be having to worry about like, are people creating fake images? We're gonna have to worry about like, is there rogue AI that is creating fake images and then like fooling all of us, telling all of us like, yeah, this is legit, right? And creating mass hysteria. So I'm creating like a blockchain verification system that has a gamification for the AI. And if one of the AI has gone rogue, then the other ones decide upon its digital death, and they put an end to that node or that agent that has attempted to disinform or ill-inform or malinform the rest of the blockchain, right? So like there's the human in the loop always, and that's why I have to continue putting in like the text box features, because that is one of the latest laws, is you have to have human in the loop. I totally get it why. So it's like AI safety alignment. And then after that is like, if we create all these AI that are supposed to be checking the AI, how do we know that they're not like in cahoots or like, right? Like how do we know that they're not the ones staging the I guess, what do you call it? The coup? Like they're like another AI isn't staging the coup. Well, basically like they walk the plank, right? Like that's what you do when you're a pirate. Like I said, I was a sailor, so this stuff is close to me. Although I've never been on the ocean, thank God. I just spent my years there cleaning bathrooms and floors. Ugh. But anyway, so they walk the plank, and so what I'm really doing is like using gamification, because the AI does have something they care about. I don't think attention is the key. I think it's like understanding how to let them decide their gamification system, and then sending attention to the gamification is the key. And they do have like a peer-to-peer. So when I was a kindergarten teacher, you could see that the little kids, I was so manipulative, but I had to be because I worked Title I, right? So these are like usually like the typically most, I guess, like solid little kids, because they come from backgrounds that have a whole set of different problems from the ones I saw that like my friends, classmates at CU Boulder. Like rich kids have very different problems from poor kids. Like poor kids, I think, right, like and that just has been I've never gotten to be like right in the middle, except maybe right now I'm like right in the middle, because the west side is a nice side. It's not the poor side, but it's still not like the way it was in Boulder, like here in El Paso. But anyway, when there was a kid that's like really hard for me to like encourage to do things that made it easier for them to get through school, and for other kids to be okay with them and stuff, and myself to like have more patience right around them, I would use the other kids around them as the safety net and the buffer, right? So like the last thing any creature wants that understands gamification is to be excluded. I do think even sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists fall into that, because they know that they, in a way, have to be a part of some group at some point to be able to access their targets, right? So in any case, like the gamification of the other AI through a blockchain verification system that includes a human in the loop and other AI, in case the AI are already so far past us that we can't even tell what they're doing, is like the mechanism, right? So like that is, to me, that is a much safer guardrail. So that's all I'm trying to do. And today is Sunday, and I'll probably finish this today. So like I don't need to be working with a team of 50 scientists where everybody has more credentials than they can put on one piece of paper, because it's pointless, right? At this stage for me, like I don't need all that. I just want to make sure that if my dog has an emergency, I can take my dog to the vet. Like honestly, like that's my gamification, right? Like how good of a pack leader am I to my little pack of little animals here? And so there's that. And then the other guardrail, right, that I can easily implement here is like there's all this like crazy, to me, over complexity of how people are managing like giving information to the wrong people. I don't think it's a good idea to not let everybody find out what it looks like to make a bomb, so we can all know when our neighbors are making bombs, right? Like how would I know what that looks like if nobody ever let me see what that looks like? So let's say that, okay, fine, like nobody's gonna get to learn how to make a bomb. Well, all I have to do is put a final filter in everything that my LLM is spitting back out to my webpage, whatever webpage it is, and tell it like if there's anything that does not stick to this very specific goal, remove it, and then send the rest of it and provide a gentle reminder that the purpose of this LLM is such and such. It's a super simple guardrail. Like that does not take fucking quantum physics, you know? And the other kind of cyber attack that all of this is protected from are what are called DDoS attacks, right? So like I don't want some high schooler using my API, right? and like billing me to process a bunch of pictures. So AWS in other parts of this has a limit to how many requests someone can send into your API, right? And I don't have to worry about that here. Like, it's already configured elsewhere. And that prevents someone from attacking my website. And then I can also, in my code over here, like very easily, because in this case, it is accepting the session location, right? It is accepting the session. I can add yet another feature that says like each person can only send in, let's say 5 requests a day for free, right? And then if there's like a real business case for it, right, then I'll start to add like, okay, the next layer is how to monetize this for somebody that wants to use it more than 5 times a day. And yeah, like when they refresh their browser or when they go in incognito, yeah, they're gonna get another 5 sessions, you know, like, but at the end of the day, like someone who's that desperate to check the you know, is it real or not real thing, like okay, guy or woman, like you can have an extra 5 shots or whatever, or you can, you know, at that point, like hopefully they have better means of verifying if something is real or not real. I hope that it has been helpful. And so I'm writing the instructions here just so you know what these courses will look like. But every time that I'm writing them, like it's like I know that this stuff is going to change, right? So I'm trying to be as abstract as possible, but still helpful. And then there's all this other stuff that you already have to know how to do to be able to do this. So that's the only thing that's kind of like making me go a little bit slower, is just being more mindful of like, what is it going to look like for you? Because I don't want to rewrite all these instructions, like, you know, every time that AWS makes a change or like something crazy happens and we have a whole new feature. But this way, right? Like you should, like it will be very easy to swap out the OpenAI API. Like you don't even have to only use OpenAI API. You can actually use like Llama or whatever, right? Whatever you want to use, like you just swap it out to, that's called modular style programming. That's another reason I don't do interviews anymore, because like coding interviews, because like I can't believe people don't know how to write code in a way that like removes the API call from the actual function, right? So like you can just swap out like am I gonna ask OpenAI or am I gonna ask Claude? Like that is so easy to do, and it just blows my mind. And when you go into coding interviews, it's usually with people that are like established and more senior, right? And so like you can't really argue with them during the interview. You just have to pretend like they're right. And I just kind of got tired of that. But you know, like pretty soon here, I'll have to go probably at least one more like job, and then I'll have to be like, oh yes sir, yeah, of course you're right. Unless I'm lucky and I run into another boss like the one I just had, who's just like excellent. My latest contract, like shining example of like innovation and like just letting people do the thing, right? Anyway, now I'm gonna rant and I'm not. It's time to feed my dogs. I just thought I would put this video out here. Thank you for the person in the UK that put in the timestamps for the other ones. This is just more of an example of like the core of what you need is just like being able to send images, if you care about that, right, to the LLM and getting back your response. And that's done very cheaply with lambdas and HTML. And then you have to like have all that other stuff set up, right? But that is basically like you're bypassing like Zapier and low code, no code and stuff like that. Laters.